Kyle, please start.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kyle Ecott, your host. Welcome back to another edition of VC We're excited to have you as always, and especially on today's episode, we've got a very exciting and very special topic to talk about and a wonderful all-star guest who's joined us all the way from around the world to talk to you, not just about what we're going to be talking about today on our topic, which I'll get to in a moment, but also a lot of other knowledge that he has to unpack as one of the leading investors in the space. Now, what are we talking about today? We're talking about impact investing, which is a lot. Now, if you look at impact investing, it can mean a variety of different things. Sometimes it's called social impact investing, some kind social investments. It has a wide range of terms, but at the end of the day, it's all about making investments and putting capital around investing in social or environmental issues. Now, again, very broad. We're going to let Gavin and myself really dive into what that means a little bit more specifically and what he's seeing, but just to give you that context. Now, why is this important? Well, today is the lead up episode. So here on every Friday, we build up all week talking about a variety of topics to get to something even bigger than what we've started with on Monday. And earlier this week, we talked about transportation, supply chains, to gaming, esports, entertainment, to fintech, blockchain, consumer habits, to e-commerce. And now again, we're coming up to impact investing. All of these topics, all of these areas play a role in this big category, and where capital is going in this area affects all of these positively, which is exciting. Now, to our audience, thank you for tuning in. If you like what you hear today, make sure to give us a thumbs up. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. Elena and myself will do our best to ask them in real time. If not, Gavin and I and the entire LATOKEN team are available 24/7 online and be happy to continue the conversation with you. And if you yourself as an investor would like to join us, reach out. We'd love to have you share your thoughts, your insights on shows like today or any topic that we have upcoming. Entrepreneurs, if you'd like the chance to come join us and have the chance to pitch us like we did yesterday with a couple entrepreneurs, you're more than welcome to join. Reach out to myself, Elena, to the entire LATOKEN team, and we'd love to have you on. Now, a big shout out to Elena and to the entire LATOKEN team for making VC possible every single day, with a variety of topics that you as entrepreneurs and you and investors care about, need to know, and need to understand everything that's happening in the latest and greatest throughout. So big shout out, Lena, and to the entire LATOKEN team for making this happen. With that being said, let's go ahead and jump in. Gavin, welcome back to the show. We had a great pre-show conversation. Before we get into that entertainment, a little introduction and background on yourself.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I suppose first and foremost, thank you to the LATOKEN team for hosting this again, and yourself, Kyle. My name's Gavin Johnson. I run an ex-tech consultancy out of the UK, and I spend a lot of time thinking about as well as doing investing work. I'm a lawyer for my sins. By training, I still practice as a lawyer, but I have a background in science and engineering, so there's a crossover in technology more generally, and I'm now developing a built environment technology legal practice with a partner law firm to deliver services to technology, specifically built environment, but also more broadly, we're not closing the door to anybody at the moment. But one of the key elements of all of this is understanding startups in particular and the analysis of projects, I suppose, and this is where you get into this issue around impact investing, if that's what you want to call it. It's all part of the corporate social responsibility movement, ESG, and there's a variety of other acronyms if anybody wants to throw some more in the alphabet soup. And hopefully, yeah, well, there's a lot to talk about here. I think what it means, where it's going, how can people get involved, how can you develop your own investment philosophy, I suppose, to lead and guide your social responsibility, your moral compass, if you like, your moral compass investing.
Yeah.
dress it up as you will.
And that's you bring up an interesting point, because one of the things that I think tends to get missed, and it's becoming more important, right? I mentioned blockchain. Blockchain is actually playing a very big role in this area, because it's not just putting capital to work as an investor. It's also putting your values, your investment internally in your company on making sure that you have that, as you said, that corporate sustainability, that corporate responsibility on how you're impacting things environmentally and socially, and also just, as I mentioned, blockchain providing that level of transparency and trust, right? And there is so much that goes into that, whether it's on the climate side, whether that is, again, to social stance. I mean, it really plays the gambit. I would say maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago, this was more around energy. And now today it's really unfolded in so many different areas, which is exciting.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. The thing about energy is it's not a soft target, but it's an easy target. And let's not get into climate change too much, because that can be quite a contentious issue for some. But
yes,
if you are behaving improperly, and oil companies, regrettably, yes, they do have oil spills and they do make mistakes, and there is an environmental impact. So whether or not you agree that burning fossil fuels is causing climate change, the root of all mankind's sins in that regard, you would have to ask yourself a question if you want to involve with some sort of social conscience, moral responsibility, whether or not investing in entities that cause such or can cause such catastrophic environmental problems fits with your moral philosophy. And you can extend the same to any large company dumping chemicals. I think PCBs is a big problem, persistent in the environment. And dare I mention, if I can remember what it's called, Monsanto, I think, in America is a big problem at the moment. Class action litigation going on because of persistence of certain chemicals in the environment causing health problems. So again, okay, it's a soft target because it's an obvious target. But you ask the question: do I believe, or okay, I might get great returns, but will I be happy that I don't want to say things like killing small children in Africa, but that's the kind of imagery that they would have to deal with.
Yeah, and look, and I'll jump in and kind of say it for you is, when we talk about this, and again, I'm pulling some of my background around blockchain is, the idea of just sourcing and transparency, and where you're getting materials to where you're getting where your supply chains are, where things are from a hiring standpoint, right? How are you hiring people? How much are they getting paid? There's so much of that plays a role into it. And then you go into the materials that go into our products, where those products coming from, et cetera, et cetera. That's just a piece of this bigger puzzle of impact. And I want to welcome in two more guests as well, who may have an opinion as well on this. Noble, Gary, welcome back to the show. Gentlemen, if you can, an intro background for both of you. Noble, let's start with you, intro background, and then we'll go to Gary.
Yeah, I apologize for being late this morning, Kyle.
Sorry.
Zoom is changing everybody's lives. I had to do a swear-in to run for an office locally for something simple, just director of East Orange County Water Department. I'll probably, we'll see how it plays out, but we have issues. So when you're talking about impact investing, sometimes you have to focus locally, right? And so we have a serious water issue in my neighborhood, and that's why I decided to try and become one of the directors and be on the board. My name is Noble Recon, and I have a small firm called Recon Capital Partners. We assist people in raising capital in the pre-seed, seed, and early Series A rounds. In the last 26 years, I've run my own hedge fund. I've written 7 books on investing and trading. And in the last probably 5 years, I've been very focused in the startup industry. I've actually an advisor of M Accelerator LA. We've started a venture fund, kind of almost a legacy of my old hedge fund, but we're raising $40 million right now to focus on fintech, entertainment, and some social impact companies, especially around food and food service supply. So yeah, thanks for having me, Kyle.
Absolutely. And if you're starting your campaign early, you've got at least one vote here. I mean, maybe we'll convince Gavin, and we got an audience as well. So you're looking sharp with the tie.
Unfortunately, you guys can't vote. It's local, but yeah, I appreciate the sentiment.
Well, to those that are local to Noble in the LA region, watch out. This man is making moves. All right, Gary, welcome to the show. A little intro background on yourself as well.
Yeah. My name's Gary Fowler. Thanks, Kyle. And I'm a serial entrepreneur and investor. I've been doing startups for 35 years. Did my first startup actually a little bit before that. And I just love artificial intelligence. The largest company I'm involved with that had an exit is Click Software. I was on the original management team. We brought it from Israel to Silicon Valley. I sold to Salesforce in August for $1.35 billion. I started Eva.ai, one of the fastest growing AI HR tech companies. I started 4 years ago with a billionaire from Russia. I started the top accelerator in Russia, the first accelerator in Russia, and the largest private corporate accelerator is one that I also started. I write a lot. I'm not on the book. Noble's got me way beat on the books, but I've written 63 articles in the last year. And now I'm going to step it up because I want to get a book out. Actually, I'm starting the journey on the book. So actually working on that too. And so on the impact investing side, we're starting a $100 million fund out of Chicago. It's a diversity fund. I've been doing this for quite some time, before all the BLM and all that. I mean, I'm passionate about it. So we're creating a $100 million fund, and the fund's whole idea is to bring in primarily Black entrepreneurs, because I believe they're highly underserved, as fellows into startups that we're going to seed from all over the world to Chicago to be able to create, to give them a chance to be able to learn and experience. Most of the folks coming into the startups will be initially from top tier schools. So Lamel McMorris, who's on the board of the NAACP, we just put him on the board of our company. He's a serial entrepreneur, et cetera. So I'm passionate. A friend of mine's an actor working for Tyler Perry. Medina is also, he's like my brother. He's also involved in the project. We believe that, opportunities, this whole, we've been changed now with Zoom, and we believe that opportunities now are can be more equally distributed. But intellectual capacity we just need to nurture it. And so we want to make a little dent in the universe.
I love it. And again, welcome to everybody. It's great to have all you guys on. And this is a very big, topic to speak about. As Gavin and I were kind of beginning with, it's so much more than just writing a check in a company, right? It goes internally to us as founders, us as investors, our moral or social or just general responsibility and how we look at things in so many different ways. And, with that, I want to kick things off with kind of my first question for today and just hear from each of you the current state of impact investing and what that means to you, because it is very different to each and every one of you. And, Gary, I want to unpack your fund and some of the other efforts that each of you are working on, but let's just start with, what is the current state of impact investing? Where are you seeing things happen? What's happening? What's not happening? Gary, let's start with you, and then we'll come back. So
I think that in the current political situation, there's a tremendous opportunity to be able to really democratize the opportunity. I mean, as we're seeing, right? I'm on calls. And this morning, I've already been on calls in Dubai, Hong Kong, Singapore, Ukraine. So opportunities are being more democratized. And what we need to do is we need to look inside ourselves, in the U.S. in particular, and really use the medium to be able to get the word out and use the medium to get the underserved in. And I believe that it's been brewing for some time, but now we finally come to a point where we got the physical world and we got the virtual world. The virtual world's allowing us to be able to do it. And that's really what I'm banking on. Next week, I have a meeting with the former mayor friend, Kasim Reed of Atlanta, we need support, right? I want to see the world change. We look at the AI opportunities that are out there today, and you know what, Kyle, I love AI. But the AI opportunities that are out there today, those companies, as we've said, AI is the new electricity, and we can get some of these individuals on board. We can create billion-dollar companies with them at the helm. And I just want to see that happen because it's for me to, even today, I mean, and I'm sure all of us here will agree, there aren't enough of the underserved as CEOs of tech companies. I mean, it's just crazy. And I keep asking the question why, and I don't get like answers. My friend Medina, my black actor, musician, brother, we have this discussion probably every other day. We talk about how to solve it. I think that we can put a stake in the ground. I really want to see that happen because it's going to change everything. In the US, we need to get more up to speed to compete with China and Russia in terms of artificial intelligence. The world needs to get up to speed with AI to be able to take care of all the challenges that are going to come forward for us, from everything from, we've talked about it before, space, environmental concerns, overpopulation. We need to go down through and do that now before it's too late. And I think so in terms of the opportunities in front of us, AI is real catalyst to get it move forward from my perspective. And it's a way to bring the underserved in.
Absolutely. Noble to you. What is the current state of impact investing for you, and what are you seeing?
This is such a wide and varied, topic. It's like, when you guys put these topics together, Kyle, you guys give us so much breadth to cover. Impact investing, let's start with profitable investing is always what I tell people. People, they do not invest with their hearts, they invest with their wallets. And so the goal is always that we make sure that there's an equitableness across the board, that it just makes good business sense. The census said just a few years ago, actually last year, that it was the first time that over 50% of the children born were non-white in America, in the United States. That was it's a big shift in what we call minority majority in the United States, when you have 50% of the children being born going to school are non-white. And so it then makes only profitable sense to start being more cognizant of who your citizenry is, right? And how to profit and how to adjust to their needs. We also have a core focus that trillions of dollars of wealth is actually being transferred to women. This is not, it's not really talked about, but the baby boomer generation, the men are passing away before the women. So they're transferring it to their wives. And then the wives are then passing away and transferring it usually to their single or divorced daughters, because their daughters are basically either getting married later in life or have gone through their first marriage and haven't chosen to marry again. So there's a huge transfer of wealth from really men to women in the next 5 to 10 years. And so it only makes sense that you start becoming, again, more cognizant of what's happening in your ecosystem and what makes prudent sense. People want to see themselves on the boards. People want to see themselves in the companies. And so I think that it's almost facetious to call it impact investing, right? Because it's really future investing. You have to really focus on what the future is bringing forward to light. Regardless of whether we wanted to or not, these things are on the horizon. We realize that the way that we're using energy, Gavin spoke about it earlier, is just unsustainable. This is why electric cars, which had been suppressed for over 100 years, I have the patent I'm putting on the first cover magazine of one of the early electric cars in 1883 that we're going to use as the cover of our magazine. And now it just is prudently making sense that we have to go back to technology that was discovered over 100 and something years ago and was stymied because oil became what was the strongest. You look at, I think the UK is starting to realize that wind farming is becoming more sustainable and makes more sense for their economy, because there is an issue with oil being shorted across the world in gluts. And, Libya now, one of the largest million barrels a day is now at 100,000 barrels a day because of infighting over oil. So it's becoming globally prudent for anybody who's even a moderate moderately futurist in understanding where the tea leaves are going, to then find a way to step in front of it and ride the wave. And as investors, we have to make those prudent decisions now. We have to set up the next generation properly by doing the things now, to look forward 25 years. Nobody imagined that rare earth metals were going to be the core battle for Africa, right? And that's why the Chinese made a sustainable and aggressive movement into Africa. And now we're looking at Ecuador and Chile being secondary areas in which there's a lot of rare earth metals, and they're trying not to create the same mistakes that occurred in Africa, where strip mining has ruined entire mountains in order to find these items. So when I think about impact investing, I look at it more as it makes economic sense, that it's more financially prudent to be at the beginning or at the near the crest of the wave than having the wave crash on you. And so most investors, Gary has it right. You have to start focusing on creating an ecosystem that is prepared for what the next 25 years looks like. And if you're not a part of that, it's going to sweep past you. So, yeah, I mean, I think that it's just, people need to sit down and really take stock, particularly investors, whether you're an angel investor or up to VC. And a lot of VCs are already smartly doing it. Goldman Sachs made the point early on, before Black Lives Matter started, we are not going to invest in any company that doesn't have a woman already sitting on the board, because they're seeing the tea leaves. So it's smart investors realize that things are kind of moving and the chessboard is changing from the end of the World War II era to where we are now at the turn of the century. And so it's important for us to kind of be forward thinking and not focus so much on the softy-feely approach about it, because I think that that's always there. We have to have humanism, but to also realize that it just makes prudent business sense. And when you appeal to people's business sense, then the impact investing can occur.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, there's many companies that many investors that are looking at those topics you just mentioned, and also many CEOs and just founders in general that are taking that as a forward-thinking approach of, we want to have, from the diversity side, we want to have a very diverse team. We want to have a very diverse, culture. We want to be very open and accepting. We also want, a very diverse board as well. And it's very impactful, and not to play on words here, but it's very impactful when you do open yourself up in those ways, and the amount of additional knowledge and perspective that you can gain, whether you are an investor or whether you are a founder, just bringing that up, right? And just bringing the best people in, no matter where they're from, who they are, or what they are, just bringing the best person to the job as well. And Gavin, I want to come to you last on this. Is, what do you see as the current state of impact? We kind of teased this out when we started, but I want to give you the chance to kind of go a little further as what you're seeing.
I think where I see it, and to echo a little bit of what Noble and Gary have said, there is a shift in, let's say government policy, not necessarily regulations and laws, but certainly in government policy. And there are expectations being set around, let's say, diversity, which Noble and Gary have both touched on. And being the no offense, Kyle, you and I were the palest guys on this call, and it's not something I can particularly speak to. I do believe that there needs to be more true meritocratic approaches. Ultimately, we all want to work with the best people, and we shouldn't be shy in finding them. And it doesn't matter, what they look like, or it's can they do and bring what they need to bring to this project. And one of the things, just there's a couple of elements here, just while I tease them out in my own mind, where I see a lot of, I suppose in the truest sense, impact investing is in a lot of fintech startups targeting millennials. And in some ways, those startups are creating investment funds, but it's an ecosystem based on a more, meritocratic philosophical view of life. And these ecosystems are deliberately designed to engage millennials because ultimately they will retire at some point, so they should have some sort of pension or fund, or they should be doing something to prepare themselves for the future, whatever they want to do, buy a house, etc. But they're beginning to run those funds along, I don't know, I don't want to say ideological because that's too strong a word, but certainly sort of moral guides, or a sense of doing right, or wanting to do right, or to echo Gary's words, bring change. And a lot of change ultimately comes out, and certain behavioral change comes out through incentives. And if the incentives are wrong, they will produce the wrong behaviors. Humans are funny animals. We like to play the system in many ways. And if we're given an opportunity, maybe, or whether or not it's morally or ethically correct, provided it's not illegal, somebody will do it. But that's not the behavior we want. And so incentivizing behavioral change and rewarding, you just have to tread very carefully, because you get into a moralistic argument about what is right and what is wrong, and who am I to decide that? You know, we all have our own moral compass, but everybody has their own moral compass. But you know, have you found things? Have you identified, you know, these funds or whatever it may be that make sense in your mind? But again, this is where it becomes very, very tricky, because do you have sufficient, I don't want to say education, but knowledge, analytical ability to determine whether or not that is a good thing? You know, you can't, or you shouldn't knee-jerk reaction to an investment. And as Noble quite rightly pointed out, you know, people invest with their wallets. You shouldn't invest with your heart, because you're going to get burnt and your heart's going to be broken. And so you do have to apply some very keen insight and keen thought, and ask yourself some actually probably quite searching questions. Am I doing the right thing? Do I believe in this? Does it make sense to me? And everybody will come to different conclusions about different things. Everyone perceives things in different ways. So it's, I know I certainly don't want to start encouraging people to do, you know, to invest in any particular fund or go in any particular direction with what they're doing, because it's not for me to say. It's for them. But certainly, you know, there is certainly things that we can all do to support that, and that is certainly around education, and certainly how you think and how you analyze and how you process the information and the data to understand what it is you want to do. And to an extent, I mean, I find myself in agreement with both Noble and Gary. I think on Gary's point, the AI, there's robo advising. It's probably a little bit old hat now, but you know, you can ask this, I don't know, your robo advisor, your investment AI, and have a conversation. This is what I think. This is what I'd like to invest in, and then it goes, and based on your moral compass, or how it understands your moral compass, you know, bring you opportunities, find you opportunities. This fund seems to be doing something that would agree with you. But it's a complicated question, and you know, the guys on this call obviously not trivializing that very well. You know, these are complex issues, and I think also we're only just really starting, and I think echoing Noble's crest of the wave point here, we're just starting to get on top of what it is we mean about that social responsibility, and how, you know, how we want companies to work around the world for the betterment of everyone, not just the, you know, one or two shareholders at the top who just want to make as much money.
Well, and for the world itself. I mean, not to cut you off, but and for the world itself. I mean, this is to Noble's point. This is a different era. Okay, and we have been transitioning into this for the past 10 plus years very quietly, and all of a sudden we had a catalyst that shot us very quickly into a different direction because of you know, again, what's happened in the past 6 months. And now as we look towards the future, it's a very different world ahead of us. I mean, there's the responsibility again from you know, investing into the individuals and the best people for any company. There's the corporate responsibility of how you do business, where you do business, where you do sourcing, how you do sourcing, the transparency as we talked about. Then there's the impact that we have on the world. And whether that be from the the rare earth material side, or whether it actually be, how the impact you leave in terms of the social and your social responsibility out there. I mean, there's so much, as you've all said, and I'll reiterate. I mean, you can look at deforestation. I've made some investments in that space myself. You can look at the rare earth side. You can look at climate change, where, Gavin, to your point, there are funds. So now going into fintech and financial inclusion, another big topic, but there are funds out there that help you diversify into these areas, because impact investing is very broad. As Noble mentioned, we pick these topics for a good reason, and they bring up great discussions. And there are essentially companies that have created index funds around all of the pieces that they see as impactful, right? And there's so much you can do. The point is, I think, from all of you, I will sum up is, choose something and get started. And do your research, right? Understand why you're investing, why you want to invest, and why this is something of importance. And if you're looking at from your company's perspective, what needs to change, and how things can change, and how can you be the catalyst for that change as well, right? We're seeing so many investors creating new funds and guidelines from just an impact internally. We'll just call it that. How to build a diverse culture, how to lead in this new era as we move into, that post-World War II era, as Noble called out, into this next kind of Web3. We don't have a term yet for it, so we'll just call it Web3. In this Web3 data-driven era, that will be really where we go from here. Again, just pulling up another area, the unbanked story. Teasing that out, right? It was a very big topic. A lot of people loved it, hated it, whatever. The fact that almost 2 billion people are unbanked in the world and are left out of financial ability is very huge. And we talked a little bit about this, Noble, on yesterday's show around fintech, e-commerce, and even blockchain as well. Is you've got a lot of investment going into Latin America, in Mexico. You've got a huge growing middle class in Mexico that now is starting to, have a voice and really want to get involved in some of these things and starting to make decisions. That hadn't happened before. I mean, in South America, we're seeing the same thing. So in Africa, right? So there's so much happening. But now a question to each of you around technology. So AR, gaming, AI, I'm pointing to each of you. So this may look weird because you're seeing me on a single window, I'm seeing everybody. But Noble, to you, I mean, AR, VR, gaming, I mean, how does this play a role in impact investing? Because I believe there is. And Gary, to you around AI, and Gavin, I'm going to leave the door open for you on tech. You focus at that intersection, not just from the legal side, but so much, and let you kind of talk about it as well. But Noble, let's start with you. AR, VR, how does this play a role in impact investing?
I think that it's a mix, right? Because augmented reality and virtual reality is kind of at the forefront of some of the development. And again, it's easy to try and segment all this out, but the core of AR and VR is AI, right? It's visual science. Computers would make a determination to create a visual. But at the end of the day, it's on one front, you think it's going to level the playing field. But now that we're sitting with COVID-19 and children can't go to school, right, across the board, whole countries are shutting down school for the year. You're finding that the kids who are already impacted technology-wise are not staying up to date. And so the ones who do have access to computers and do have access, I have 5 kids, I have 4 boys, and my 9-year-old has been learning Python since last year. Shout out to a great company called Code Combat. I don't own any shares or anything, but I'm going to actually buy some. But the reality is they teach kids how to have fun with programming. And they right now are running a worldwide contest of where kids are literally programming their little simulated characters gaming wise to battle these other simulated characters. So my 9-year-old has been learning how to program video games and he just turned 9. So since he was 8. Right. But there's a whole swath of children who don't have access to that. and just by looking at the numbers. So he's in this competition, and there's only 300 kids. It was only a $5 entry fee, but only 300 kids globally playing this game where they're playing against each other. And so the digital divide is just so obvious in so many different ways that you would hope that this would give people a boost up. But augmented reality, virtual reality, it's really, I think, going to exacerbate some of the. I think the technology now is going to start exacerbating the divide. While there's going to be a whole Western component that's going to be headed towards a singularity, and when 50% of the world still doesn't have potable water, doesn't have running water or drinking water, right now in a day and age where we're able to sit here and do Zoom, there's such a weird dichotomy that we're living in right now, that it's just you get me on the social impact investing, Kyle, and you get me all philosophical, but
it's okay. There's so much here. I mean, I co-authored a book. Sorry, Gary. I apologize. We're one-upping you here, but I co-authored a book with UNICEF around social impact and wearable technology, and we saw, several companies around the world that were working together to bring wearables or connected devices, some sensor technology as well at the time, into the world, and how they could solve some of these what we take for granted in some places in the world, and others it's life-changing, these problems, and it's happening everywhere.
Yeah, it's happening everywhere. And so I think on one level you have the separation, but then as we saw what happened in Africa, they never got a chance to establish landlines, so they went straight to wireless. And so there's going to be that same kind of leap that, if done properly, when you share the technology, it'll give other cultures an opportunity to leapfrog where everyone else was at. And that'll give them, that's why South Korea had 5G almost a decade before anyone else, right? Became the litmus test of how a wireless network can actually function and operate, and they were able to create that as the beginning battleground of high technology. And South Korea is usually technologically advanced because they built on the stacks of everyone else and then be able to apply it. So it's a matter of how well we're going to share that technology and then integrate that into day-to-day use cases. I believe, and one of the most exciting things that I've seen is online education, period. You have Treehouse, you have a great Hacker 101, which teaches people how to go after bounties and teach them cybersecurity. And it's free. They teach you everything you need, it's free. And then you actually are able to go get bounties online from top tier places because you've discovered bugs and security breaches. So there's so much free education now that if we can continue to provide access to it, things like augmented reality and virtual reality and whatever the case may be, technology-wise, programming-wise, and gaming-wise, is starting to create a lot more even playing field. The only concern that I really do have about any esports, and when especially comes to gaming, is the dichotomy of two things. While being a gaming developer by default in augmented reality, the gamification has become dangerously exploitive. You have Japan having entire tribunals against companies utilizing the hunter-gatherer instinct in the games to drive people to continuously play. At one point, prior to all this, the government banned Tencent from allowing their Honor Kings to be played too much because they were making too much money every day because they had exploited certain psychological embeds in people. So on the one hand, that has become a big concern, that the gaming is great, but in escapism, are you driving them to become high-end, overly high-end consumers to the point of where they don't even realize that they're consuming, that you're just really driving the Las Vegas effect too far. Even the US government had a whole tribunal about blind boxes and said, why are you giving kids blind boxes? It's akin to gambling at Vegas. We have to at least tell them what the reward is so they can receive it. So there's a lot of social things that come with gaming that we have to kind of pay attention to. And then the other side of that is the exploitation of children, right? Most of these esports teams are comprised of kids who are under 18. In that world of esports gaming, by the time you're 22 or 23, you're actually the old man in the industry. So we have to start kind of tying up some of these loose ends that have kind of run away from us to protect the people who are easily most vulnerable along the spectrum. and I'm not for hyper policy. I don't think it has to be governed. I think self-regulation can exist. I've been in the device industry
It's
for years.
social. Yeah, it's social responsibility. I mean,
Social
just not to
responsibility.
cut you off, it's just social responsibility, right? It's
Yeah.
understanding of like getting things started and learning and making adjustments, but you have to make the adjustments. And to your point on education, look, this is, I mean, in some cases, I'm a little jealous. I think we might all be of where education can go. We'll see if it does. But you know, you look back at education that we all went through, including the celery example that we were talking about, Gavin. You know, education back years ago and even still today is you sit in a classroom, you learn from one to one. You know, currently in the past couple of years, it's started to open up, right? There's more opportunities to learn, as you said, Code Academy and others I highly recommend. But now, as we've mentioned in previous episodes, you can literally learn anything, anytime, anywhere from anyone in the world, meaning the expert of the experts. You don't have to read their book, but you should. Check out Noble. You don't have to necessarily, you know, take a class. You can listen to a podcast. You can also get the chance to have a one-on-one. You can have interactions like this. There's so much opportunity to learn from the best and the best that we could have one of the coolest levels of education we've ever seen in our lives. But with that being said, you know, Noble, your point heard loud and clear. Gary, I want to come to you. How does AI play a role in impact investing? And then after this, we'll get to the lightning round with following Gavin's thoughts as well. So how does AI play a role in all this?
Well, I mean, AI is the backbone for a lot of what we're talking about. AI is the reason we're on this Zoom today, right? I mean, it's the backbone. So, and we need to understand that it is going to fundamentally change our lives. So, you know, we've talked before, Kyle, about, you know, look at the population. I talk about it many times. In the last 100 years, the population has 4x increased. It's 7.9 billion people today. Now, if we're on that, stay on that trend going forward, we have some serious problems, environmental problems, overpopulation problems, and now we talk about space, right? The next frontier. So where AI comes in is there's so much data that we have in front of us and so many opportunities to maybe help us make better decisions that we need it. And, you know, everything we're talking about today is about, think about it, it's about democratizing the opportunity, just like Zoom. It gives us an opportunity to be able to go everywhere. Where are you, Gavin? You're in, are you in the UK right now, or where are you today?
I'm in Europe at the moment, but yeah, I'm from the UK.
Yeah. So
mysteriously in Europe. That's all we need to know. He's in Europe.
Shh.
Just in case there's anybody local who's watching, and when I'm out and about later, they can come running up. Oh, I saw
your autograph. Yeah. So, I mean, here we are, right? This is what it's all about. So I say this, there's two worlds. I'm writing another article in Forbes about this. So there's two worlds today. There's this truly virtual democratizing the opportunity world, and there's a physical world. To Noble's point, that the people that don't move to that next level, that don't really embrace the change, the digital transformation, are going to be left behind, way behind. And so whether it's, you know, trying to figure out the potable water or whatever, they're not going to have the knowledge to be able to make the right decision. So our job is to be able to democratize it even more and help them become aware of the opportunities. So we can all work together to make this world a better place. So in terms of AI investment, you know, so what I'm doing is actually working with the underserved. So as I said, I'm primarily interested today in the Black and Hispanic community, primarily Black community, and bringing them to technology, because I think it's absurd that you don't have more Black CEOs of companies. It just is absurd. So I had, you know, the story is I had my friend Medina, who is on the Have and Have Nots and is a rapper. And I said, Medina, we're talking about this. Why don't you go to Stanford and take some courses in AI? Why don't you go to Harvard and take some courses in MIT? He did it. So we put him into a tech company. So he was actually, you know, our mutually agreed he was going to be the guinea pig on this thing. And it turned out wonderfully. He actually got into blockchain. He understood, he's extremely bright to begin with, but fundamentally understood blockchain, and he became passionate about this. And he's the one that convinced Lamel McMorse of the NAACP to come on our board. So I think we just got to show some resolve that it can be done. And if we have one person, two people, some support, we can make a big difference. So we can bring the communities together, because it's kind of, you talk about the rare earth materials, you talk about, folks in Africa, folks from the Amazon, they should have the equal opportunity to be able to make a dent in the universe and change the world in a positive way too. So AI is a conduit. It's the electricity. It's the enabling this virtual, digitally transformed world to make better decisions, to make better payments, to basically enhance our lives. So, and it's an opportunity to, I forget who said it. I think Noble said it, in terms of impact in the wallet, because my thing is, once we have a billionaire that comes out of one of these companies that we get a lot of press on, a lot of people are going to want to start signing up. So once we start impacting their wallets, it's going to become a trend, and we want to be right at the forefront.
Well, and not just a trend. I mean, look, we all care about these things as well, right? We want to see these things change more than ever. And again, whether that be internally on a company, externally, or for the world, we want to see. Gavin mentioned this, kind of teeing up around millennials, and Gavin, I'm coming to you next. We all want to see the world as a better place. Now, for many years, we've said that, and now we've gotten to the point where we're seeing action really start to take shape in that. And I'll leave it at that, because it can get very hairy very quickly throughout those areas. But nonetheless, we're starting to see action, which is positive. And Gavin, to you, again, kind of where does technology, do you see playing a role up throughout this? And then, gentlemen, we're coming to the lightning round just after.
Well, technology, at least in theory, is the great equalizer. And that's, as Gary said, AI being the backbone. And yes, you can see that it's the conduit through which great change could be brought about. And Noble mentioned as well, developing countries leapfrogging, technologically speaking. And, this is why people in very rural Africa have a mobile phone, because it's much easier to set up infrastructurally a tower, relatively easy to power it from a grid. It doesn't necessarily require that power to be terribly stable, as long as it's reasonably so. And you have some of the highest mobile phone users in the world are in Africa. And you've got to think, well, that's fantastic, isn't it? Look what technology has achieved. But it's only a first step. And we spoke, sorry, Carl, you mentioned the unbanked, and then there's the unbanked, and then the underbanked or underserved. And there's clearly much that can be done there. Certainly, fintech solutions should be revolutionizing the finance sector. One may wonder whether they, in truth, are or not. A lot of exit strategies seem to be based on banks buying out fintech startups, which doesn't strike me as terribly revolutionary, but who knows, maybe it will be. I don't know. But I think it comes back again to incentives. Are we driving the right incentives for people to do, okay, take with a pinch of salt when I say the right thing, perspective notwithstanding on that, are we seeing the changes, or how do we incentivize the behaviors that we want to see that change? And that's a challenge. Humans we're very sticky, very stubborn, very, very difficult to change. Once our minds are set in a particular course, it can be very difficult, even in the face of absolute truth, that you say that something is left, and no, the truth is it's right. Because you believe it's left, and that's it, it's left forever. So yeah, there's a lot to overcome, and technology, as I say, technology should be the great equalizer. Whether we, as human beings, will let it be the great equalizer, I I don't know. We can be quite resistant to that. And just because something's a great idea and makes a lot of sense, and it's environmentally sustainable and it's ecological and plays into all the social responsibilities that we have, and it's staring us in the face that this is the solution, you would be surprised how many people don't adopt it. And there's a challenge there. There's a sort of internal ideological challenge for us as human beings to get over that. So I'm not a psychologist. I may sound like one actually when I talk. I'm sort of hearing myself talk to myself at the moment. So I think there's a lot to be done, and you know, as Noble and Gary have articulated this much more eloquently than I have. You know, finding those people that can change the world, that can put a dent in the universe. Where they come from, they can come from anywhere, and all we have to do, and it's very simple, is allow them the opportunity to come from anywhere. And when we manage to do that, we will see great change.
Absolutely. And guys, thank you so much for all of your input and insight today. As Noble did mention, this is a very big and broad topic, and there's a lot to talk about. And unfortunately, don't have enough time to cover it all today. And we are at the top of the hour, so I want to make sure everyone gets their closing thoughts in and where everyone can find you online, because I feel like this is something that's going to continue. And as each of you have a strong focus in these areas and also strong opinions to see these things change positively, I think it'll be great for our audience to be able to know where to find you and connect. So Noble, let's start with you. Quick closing thoughts, and where can everyone find you online?
First of all, you can find me online a few places. I'm Noble Dracone. Easy to find me on LinkedIn. Twitter, you can do @Dracone, my last name. As well as you can find me at maccelerator.la, in which we work with people from all walks of life through the accelerator. And globally, we're globally focused. So we've had participants in the cohorts from China to all throughout Europe, through out parts of Japan and South America. So and right now, our whole focus is really building our fund to really assist. We have a 300 company mandate to focus on companies that have a diverse CEO, diverse background, 100%. So the $40 million fund that we're raising is all about that, working through the accelerator and just kind of guiding people along the process. Closing thoughts. I think that people need to remove, there's an emotional component to all this, and I get that. But I just want people to focus on the fact that it's profitable. Before Black Panther, the movie, came out, no one thought that you could have $1 billion global film that was led with nearly an all-star African-American cast that was global, people from Europe who were Black, people from the US. And it created an awareness that kind of film could be made. And it was unfortunate because it was on the heels of Oscars Too White, right? Just a few years before that. So that's one level of impact investing. But then it has to be understood that in order for all of us to inherit the world, it has to be a world that's focused on finding the profit in energy. Energy is the key. Gary talked about it. When you have the potential of either going to space or overpopulation, energy is really the key. And we have to be cognizant that if Tesla, one man, Elon Musk, can literally create an electric car and then set a new wave, that there's room for other innovators to drive that forward, and for us to be open-minded to support those people who may seem on the fringe. So you remove the emotion from it and really focus on the potential for the long-term profits, and you'll start making the right decisions, and it won't longer be impactful, it'll just be profitable.
Absolutely. Gary, to you, where can everyone find you in closing thoughts?
Yeah, sure. Gary Fowler, LinkedIn is the best way. And I believe this is an incredible opportunity because of the democratization, as I've talked about. And we need to just lead by example. Noble made a very accurate point, and that is, if you affect on one side, you want to lead by your heart. On the other side, if people understand that they can be successful and it's a good business model, they're really, really interested in investing in it. So, do both, but leading by the heart is really critically important, and be passionate about it. So I think this is an opportunity of a lifetime. I think we're just at the beginning of the democratization of opportunities like we've never, ever seen before. And for startups out there, this is your time to spread the message around the world and bring these multicultural, intergenerational teams together. That's the other thing we haven't talked about, Kyle, is intergenerational. So it's good to have the young startups, but having people with experience, especially when they have the contacts, and you can't really get those through Zoom, that are built up over time. It would be good to have those mixed teams. So opportunities today, go get them and get shit done.
Absolutely. And Gavin, to you, closing thoughts, and where can everyone find you?
Sure. So Gavin Johnson, best place is probably LinkedIn. Just search my name. I'm happy to, connect with most people. Be cautious about what you say. But no, I'm more than happy to, I think shoot the breeze is the American phrase, with anybody who just wants a conversation about these things, because you never know where opportunities are going to come from. And I'm from my own experience, I had a coffee. He was with a student. He was doing his dissertation, and we were just chatting about some blockchain stuff, and that spun out a new idea that I'm actively pursuing now, which was a surprise. I just met him to give him my 2 cents on blockchain and the use of it, and off we went with this idea. It was great fun. Closing thoughts. Guys, it's a big, complicated, difficult, interconnected world, and we never know where the next whomever your idol is, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, we can reel off a whole list of names, Elon Musk. And I think as a society, I hope we are becoming more open to it. I hope we are breaking down the fences that we've put up between ourselves, because we're all in it together. Ultimately, this is, as Gary said, we're all live on the same planet. We've all got to look after it. One of us makes a mistake and the entire planet can pay for it. So I hope through impact investing, if it becomes certainly more permeated throughout society, throughout the developed and developing world, I think we can create the change we want to see, and people will begin to buy in and see the value in doing that, in protecting the world, making it more sustainable, whatever, better education, unbanked, engaging the unbanked, and so on. And I know it's quite a number of quite generic statements there, but it's, these topics are so broad, it's extremely difficult to articulate it in any other way, I think, at the moment.
And I think all three of you are very right. I mean, we have one planet. Let's try our best to get it right. We're all here, all trying to do our best, and let's continue to help do our best and reshape things for the better, and continue to learn and continue to reshape and continue to take those lessons and continue to try new things and make this world a better place. Now, with that being said, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. To your audience, thank you for tuning in as well for this week's episode, Friday episode of VCTV. If you like what you heard, click subscribe, give us a thumbs up. If you'd like to be on a show like today, thank you, Gary. We'd love to have you. Reach out as an investor. We'd like to have you on a number of topics to share your insights and thoughts, as our investors did today. If you're an entrepreneur and you'd like to pitch us your idea and what you're doing along with our audience, reach out. We'd love to have you. And a big thank you to Elena and to the entire LATOKEN team for making VCTV possible. As all of our investors said, thank you, Noble. We're all available on social media 24/7, 365. Be happy to continue the conversation with you on today's topic or a number of other topics. I'm Kyle Ellicott, your host. Thank you, Gavin. I'm signing off, and we'll be back here on Monday with another edition of VCTV and a full week of tons and tons of great content and more from investors around the world.